192 dead. That's what Athens counted after the Battle of Marathon, 490 BC. The Persians lost 6,400, a kill ratio of 33 to 1. These numbers come from Herodotus, the first historian. For 25 centuries, people have assumed they're exaggerated. They're not. That ratio is what happens when an army doesn't just lose, it disintegrates. This is the story of how a commander named Miltiades turned terrain, timing, and a secret signal into the most devastating trap in ancient warfare. The year is 490 BC. The Persian Empire lands a massive force at Marathon, 26 miles from Athens. Herodotus claimed hundreds of thousands of Persians. Modern scholars estimate far fewer, but the force still outnumbered the Greeks, backed by feared cavalry, expert archers, and imperial wealth. Against them, 10,000 Athenian hoplites. A hoplite is a citizen soldier, a man who bought his own armor and trained with his neighbors in a tight formation called the phalanx. Their only allies, 1,000 men from tiny Plataea. Athens needed Sparta. The city dispatched Pheidippides, a hemerodromos, a professional long-distance runner, to cover 140 miles to Sparta on foot. Not the 26 miles of the modern marathon. That story confuses the sources. Pheidippides reached Sparta in 2 days. The Spartans agreed to help but couldn't march. A religious festival forbade it. He ran back. The Athenians would fight alone. What did each hoplite carry? A Corinthian helmet, solid bronze enclosing the entire head, a breastplate of bronze or layered linen, bronze greaves on the shins, the hoplon, a round shield 3 feet across, gripped through a central armband and a handle at the rim, an 8-foot spear called the dory, a short sword, the xiphos for close quarters, total weight on one man's body, 50 to 60 pounds. Keep that number in mind. Now the revelation that changes everything. Visit the marathon plain today. Flat, dry, open, perfect ground for Persian cavalry. If this was the ancient battlefield, Miltiades was a fool to fight here. But this isn't what he saw. In 1996, geologists drilled core samples deep into the plain. Beneath meters of sediment, they found a large freshwater lake. A stream flowed from it to the coast. Marshland surrounded both. 2,500 years of silt had buried an entirely different landscape. The ancient battlefield wasn't an open plain. It was a narrow corridor, marsh on one side, hills on the other, the lake blocking movement to the south. Persian numbers couldn't deploy. Cavalry couldn't charge through soft ground. The terrain neutralized every Persian advantage. Miltiades positioned his hoplites on the slope above this natural funnel, blocking the road to Athens. The Persians camped on the coastal flat below. For days, neither side moved. The standoff broke because of a secret. The Persian commanders loaded their cavalry onto transport ships in the night, sending them south around Cape Sunion to strike Athens directly while its army sat pinned at Marathon. Ionian Greeks, men from Greek cities conscripted into Persian service, slipped a message to the Athenian lines. The medieval encyclopedia called the Suda preserves the signal, chorus hippies. The cavalry are away. Miltiades grasped it instantly. The cavalry threat was gone, his one window. But the fleet was sailing for an undefended Athens. He had to destroy the Persian infantry here and march home before the city fell. At dawn, he ordered his men to arm. Miltiades ordered the charge. 11,000 hoplites, 50 to 60 pounds of bronze on every man, advanced at a run across roughly a mile of open ground, straight at the Persian lines. For decades, scholars call this impossible. Men carrying that weight cannot sprint a mile and then fight. The charge had to be literary invention, and then people tested it. In 1976, physical education students at Penn State strapped on equivalent weight and ran the distance. They made it. Military historian Peter Kranz showed that loaded runs are standard in modern infantry training. Soldiers routinely carry 60+ pounds over rough terrain. The charge was brutal, not impossible. It also served a tactical purpose. Persian composite bows were lethal at range. A walking formation crossing open ground absorbs volley after volley. At a run, the Greeks crossed the killing zone in about 5 minutes, reaching the Persian lines before the arrows could shatter the phalanx. The formation Miltiades designed was the real weapon. He stretched his phalanx wide, wall to wall across the terrain corridor, so the Persians couldn't outflank him. Then he made a counterintuitive choice. He thinned his center to just 4 ranks deep, barely enough to hold, but he packed his wings thick, with the Plataeans anchoring one flank. The Greek line hit the Persians at a run. On both flanks, the reinforced wings smashed the lighter Persian formations and drove them backward. In the center, the thin Greek line buckled under pressure. The Persians pushed through it, certain they were winning. This was the trap. As the Persian center surged forward, the Greek wings, having routed the enemy flanks, wheeled inward. Thousands of armored hoplites pivoted and drove into the exposed sides of the Persian center mass. The Persians found themselves surrounded on 3 sides. Behind them, marshland and the lake. No way out. This maneuver is a double envelopment, a pincer closing from both sides. Military historians point to Hannibal at Cannae as the textbook example. Cannae happened 274 years later. Miltiades did it first. When the encirclement closed, the Persian army shattered. Men threw down weapons and ran into marshes where they drowned, towards ships beached on the shore. The Greeks pursued in full armor, killing as they went. The playwright Aeschylus fought at Marathon. His brother Cynaegirus chased the Persians to the waterline, grabbed the stern of a retreating ship, and lost his hand to an axe blow. This was no longer battle, it was pursuit. Here is the principle the numbers reveal. In warfare, ancient or modern, the vast majority of casualties occur after one side breaks. A cohesive formation kills dozens. A pursuing army running down fleeing men kills thousands. The moment organized resistance becomes panicked flight, the killing turns exponential. 192 Greek dead, 6,400 Persian dead, not mythology. The mathematics of collapse. The Persian fleet still sailed for Athens, but the Athenians force marched 26 miles back from Marathon and reached the harbor before the ships arrived. The cavalry gambit failed. Athens survived. Marathon became the founding myth of Athenian democracy, proof that citizens defending their own land could break a professional imperial army. But strip the mythology away and the lesson is tactical. Miltiades chose when to fight, the moment the cavalry departed. He chose where to fight, a constricted corridor that made Persian numbers a liability, and he chose how to fight, a formation designed to lose in the center and win everywhere else. The most devastating victories don't come from overpowering an enemy. They come from engineering conditions where the enemy's strength becomes irrelevant and their collapse becomes inevitable.